I'm Danny Panzella, reporting from the South Huntington Library, where a group called Save Long Island has called a town hall meeting and invited the 30-some-odd legislators from Long Island who voted for the New York SAFE Act. The SAFE Act was the emergency legislation restricting gun ownership that passed shortly after the Sandy Hook massacre. Save Long Island is a nonpartisan grassroots group that holds meetings and informational sessions on a variety of topics, from emergency preparedness, the dangers of pharmaceutical drugs, and geoengineering. About 100 concerned citizens showed up to vent their frustrations over their legislators' votes and discuss remedies such as running grassroots candidates, voting out the offenders, and Rosa Parks-style non-compliance with unconstitutional laws. Save Long Island gave everyone who attended the meeting the opportunity to take the mic and speak directly to their legislators. Here's what they had to say.
Is Phil Boyle here? I don't see him. Carl Marcellino and Chad Lupinacci. Anybody here? Any legislators in this room want to raise their hands? So the cowards didn't come. That's how I'm seeing it right now.
Look what's happened here in New York. Some kid in Connecticut commits a horrific act, and we're made to pay for it. Are you okay with that? No. Are any of you okay with that? No. Then stand up and say it. Now's your chance. Yeah. Now's your chance. Be pissed off. Tell Cuomo and all of them. People are going to see this. People everywhere are going to see this. And they're going to be like, this is New York? New Yorkers actually stand up and have a pair of balls to stand up and say no? If this state can stand up and say no, all the states are going to stand up. Okay, except California. I don't know what's going on.
All right. Hi guys. I have a couple things to say. I'm Tracy Diaz. I have two small children. I live here in Huntington. And obviously it was an atrocity what happened in Connecticut. But my big thing is the hypocrisy behind this, which, I don't know if many people have thought about this. Okay, they're trying to get illegal weapons off the streets, and they're trying to get high-capacity, magazines barred from being sold and things like that. And that'll make everybody safer, right? We'll all be safe. There'll be less crime. Everyone will be okay. Well, then how come the police can still use those weapons against us? And how come there are armored tanks driving around in Manhattan? And then why, if it's so safe after these laws are passed, is the government buying up ammunition like it's nobody's business? Why is all that stuff okay, and we're the ones who are disarmed? And what happens if we're in our bed at night and we hear an intruder, and we go to the door and we arm ourselves and we're ready to protect ourselves and our family, and we get to the door and someone bursts the door down, and what's our first instinct? To protect ourselves, right? Well, it was the cops, and they accidentally went into the wrong house. And now, you've shot a first responder. Do you go to jail for the rest of your life because of that? Why is it okay for them and it's not okay for us? The other thing to think of is, we've all said this before, we don't see citizens that are carrying firearms legally running around committing murder and shooting, 15 people in a school or whatever the case may be. Adam Lanza stole that weapon from his mother, who owned it legally. The second he put his hands on it, it became illegal through theft, which is a crime. So stopping her or anyone else from possessing weapons doesn't stop the mentality behind the person that's going to use it for the wrong purposes. And that goes back to the mental health issue. And, it's been proven, I think it's 14 out of the last 20 or so mass murders, the perpetrators behind those were on some sort of psychotropic drug. And we're medicating our kids now. And we're medicating everybody to try and stop them from mental illness. 1 in 5 people, 1 in 5 males in the city has ADHD. I call my son that runs around like a crazy person normal. I don't try to medicate him and keep him complacent in a corner without thinking. No, he's a normal kid. Who makes the guidelines for what mental illness actually is, and what's their motivation behind that? And it doesn't stop there, guys. This is just the beginning, and I think it's opened up a lot of people's eyes. There are so many things going on in this country that are horrible that the government's doing for either corporate interests or to take away our freedoms. And if you guys haven't noticed, what's in the news today besides North Korea is the UN Small Arms Treaty. So if you think this is coincidence, you're absolutely incorrect. And it's going to take everyone to stand up here, voice their opinion, and get angry about it. Because if people are quiet, it just goes unnoticed. Everybody goes about their lives, and nothing gets accomplished. So for my kids and everyone else's, please guys, let's do something about this. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alexa. I'm 23. This law affects me. It affects my kids, and it's certainly going to affect my grandkids, assuming it stays the way it is. And all these people up here, they voted for it. So now comes the point where we can sit here and we can complain and we can moan all we want. But until we go out there and we get onto campaigns and we get people like me and my age, and hopefully younger than me, excited about getting on campaigns, we're not going to change it. Because the next batch that gets elected are going to be exactly the same, because it's the same people working for them. So if you have children, bring them to these meetings, get them excited, get them involved. And beyond that, I'm pissed off, okay? I spent the past good 3 years, unfortunately, in the hospital with my uncle. Had the pleasure of meeting a former worker for Remington, okay? His friends are preparing to leave New York State because Smith & Wesson, Remington, and 3 other bullet companies and gun companies are leaving the state already. They're not waiting for the law to kick in. How many jobs are we going to have to lose for this law to no longer make sense? How many tax dollars are we going to have to lose for this law to not make sense? How much money is going to have to leave New York State for them to finally get that it doesn't matter whether it's a law-abiding citizen? Because the law-abiding citizen is going to do the right thing no matter what. They're going to do what they're supposed to do. And you're not going to target an illegal with a law. They're illegal by nature. They're not going to follow the law. So if you think this needs to be changed, you need to bring your kids here. You need to get them involved. Thank you.
My name is Henry Teja. I've been involved with firearms training for over 25 years. I've owned firearms probably most of my adult life. I just want to state some cold facts using federal government and state government figures. The CDC since 1968 has conducted 51 studies for gun violence and gun laws. There's some 20,000 plus gun laws, federal, state, and local gun laws on the books. What they found out, that not one law either reduced crime or increased crime. No matter what they restricted, no matter how long the waiting periods were and everything. Why? Well, let's go to the next thing that come out of the FBI and the Department of Justice. In 2011, they convicted only 9.2% of some 11,000 arrests for actual weapons possessions charges. They found out that 50% or better of the weapons possessions were illegal, owned by a felon. And that 60% of all crime is either gang or drug related. And 50% or better in the gang department, firearms fatalities were done by persons of 17 years or less. They're not even legally allowed to purchase a firearm anywhere in the United States. In 2012, Syracuse University just released figures for the 90 top cities that do not prosecute federal gun law crimes. New York City came in as 88th. Chicago and Illinois were the only two cities ahead of them. Washington, D.C. was number 78. These are federal courts not prosecuting their own federal gun laws in their own jurisdictions. The average weapons charge conviction is less than 5% nationwide. And part of the problems is, instead of making the terms, if you use a gun, a convicted crime, and you get an automatic sentence of either 5 to 10 years, it's always pled down so the gun conviction disappears, and they wonder why gun crime is still happening. They're not prosecuting using the laws that they have on the books. And that's all I have basically right now to say about that.
Not so good with thinking on them, but I have one written down. I'm a veteran, and I don't appreciate the fact that, you know, I sit here, I served my country. While I was in the military, I was able to use many different types of weapons, and I was fine to use those then. But now you give me something like an AR-15, and now all of a sudden it's not okay because I couldn't go hunting with it. Well, I know plenty of people who have gone hunting with a Bushmaster or something, and I don't see why it wouldn't be a good, you know, choice to use. That's the first major point that I have. Second major point is, if this is what they're doing with the Second Amendment, what can they do with the First Amendment? I mean, if a First Amendment means text message, then why does the Second Amendment mean musket? Really? Really? So, you know, the last thing I want to say is this really isn't about guns. This is about the rights. And the politicians, they're not doing what that they were elected to do. We voted them into office because they said they were going to do good things, and they're not. And so maybe it's time to vote somebody else into office.
Hi, my name is Bob Schuon, and I was a 32-year Republican. Okay, I voted Republican pretty much every election. And I live here on Long Island. I live on the South Shore. Where's my representative? Okay? Whether you are for or against, where are they? We're their people. We voted them in. They work for us. But they're not here because they care so little about what we think that they don't bother to show up. Only 5 actually had the courtesy to send a letter to say, I'm not coming. Okay, there are 2 people, Rhea and the other gentleman, who have, you know, they had other things that they could not avoid, and that's understandable. But no one? These are the people that you voted into office. These are the people that represent you in Albany. And they don't care. They figure they've got what they need. They're going to get voted in every year like clockwork. They're going to collect that paycheck, and they're going to do whatever they want. Is that what you want?
No.
Okay, is that where your rights are?
No.
We need to do something. I don't know if you guys know about a guy named Dan Bongino. He's a Republican in Maryland. He made a big splash on the internet because he gave a speech on the gun issue. Passionate speech. You know what he said? Action matters. And it does. Action matters. We can talk till we're blue in the face, and we can bring this up, and we can have these meetings. But when it comes down to it, what are you ready to do to change the system? Are you ready to work to get people who actually care in office, who don't want to throw on more regulations and more taxes and more things that are going to destroy business in the state, and are going to actually stop it and roll some of these laws back? Things like nullification and all that, they're great. And they're a good thing, but your representatives have to agree. That starts here. That starts with you.
Hi, I also was a Republican for 41 years. Technically, I still am. And there's just 2 points that I want to make. Number one is as an old fat granny type. I had shot my father's shotgun when I was younger, and it recoiled me back to next week. I couldn't handle it. But from what I hear, something like an AR-15 would be a lot easier for a woman to protect herself with. Okay? Even an old fat granny type. Second issue, law-abiding citizen. A law-abiding citizen should not be restricted because they are law-abiding. And it wouldn't matter if it was a handgun, a musket, a rifle, an AR-15, or a .50 caliber mounted on the Prius.
Hello, my name is Richard Kraft. I used to be mentally unbalanced. I voted for Jimmy Carter, but I'm better now. I have a problem with the people who are, I'll call them gun grabbers, I'm sorry, but they have no idea what they are actually talking about. Because something has an appearance that looks dangerous. Oh, that's bad. They don't understand that an AR-15 is not an assault weapon, it's a semi-automatic rifle. Because of a little thing on there that's select fire. But they sort of forget about that. This was handed out in the front of the meeting. That's very near and dear to me because I have 2 rifles, Ruger 10/22, semi-automatic. One is stock the way it came out of the box. The other one is modified with a target barrel and a thumb hole stock. One is an assault weapon. One is, it's the same exact rifle. Just because of a little piece of wood, it's now an assault weapon. We have the Honorable, Dianne Feinstein, who has imploding bullets. I searched on the internet. There is no such thing as an imploding bullet, I'm sorry. Does anybody else have any? It's, and it just, people believe that their politicians have all this knowledge. They have the appearance of being the smart people. Guess what? You see how that's going? Because they come out with, they just put this rhetoric out. If they get enough people to believe them, they'll say, oh, this must be true. And that's not the case. And one of the things shall not be infringed. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Darlene Dow, and I'm 18, and I've been Democrat for 3 months, and probably will be for a little bit longer, but that's tentative. You know, I think it's often in times of tragedy that we see these laws be passed in such speedy ways, and while we can see the intent of it, the repercussions are not that good, obviously. Bad phrasing, but whatever. The laws that we have in place are good ones already, and we didn't need this act to already affirm them. What we needed was the government to actually enforce our gun laws, and I think someone had said it that, you know, we don't enforce them as well as we should. And also, you know, it's through our actions that we, you know, actions speak louder than words, and all the rhetoric in the world will not make up for, you know, the people who do illegal things with guns. It's not the law-abiding citizens that need to be punished for what they do. And, you know, and I may be a Democrat, but I may not own a gun myself, nor I will ever own a gun. But that's my personal belief, but nor do I think people's rights should be infringed because I believe that, you know.
Hello, my name is Edward Sullivan. I'm 23, and I wanted to start off with just the Bill of Rights in general. Our founding fathers, when they drafted the Bill of Rights, they drafted on a philosophy of natural rights. These natural rights are given to you by God. They cannot be taken from you by any government. They cannot be destroyed. They cannot be denied, or they cannot be disparaged by any government, by any entity, by any creation of man. So, the idea that the government can limit our natural right to self-defense is actually contradictory to how the 9th Amendment of the Constitution has been written. The 9th Amendment reads that the enumeration of certain rights in this Constitution cannot be used, cannot be construed to deny or disparage the rights of the people, and it also says that other rights retained by the people. So, I wrote a letter to the Supreme Court just about 2 weeks ago, and I said, there's this dangerous rhetoric in the country coming from both sides of the aisle, be they Democrats or Republicans, that the government creates rights and it permits us to have rights. But if the government is permitting you to have a right, then it's not a right, it's a privilege. It's a privilege. And if the government can then create these rights and, create these privileges, and they also have the ability to deny and disparage and destroy these rights. But they're not rights again. Remember, they're privileges. That is the opposite of a libertarian. An authoritarian believes in statism, that the state creates rights and has the ability to determine which class of citizens will and will not have those rights. As a libertarian, we believe that all men are naturally born at birth, endowed by their creator with their natural rights. Okay? So, let's talk about the Third Amendment for a moment. The Third Amendment.
They haven't tried to infringe that one.
Yes. Well, let's discuss the Third Amendment. It's the best justification that can be used to justify the existence of the Second Amendment. So it reads that no soldier in time of peace shall be quartered in any house without the consent of its owner, nor in time of war unless prescribed by law. So let's think about the Third Amendment. Do you think the Third Amendment is written to protect you against a foreign government?
No.
Yeah. So right there, we already see that the founding fathers are very well aware that we needed protections against our own government, because no foreign government is going to respect our Constitution. So when there's an idea of parity of arms, the gentleman mentioned a musket somewhere in here. Do you think that our ancestors, do you think they would have given up their muskets at the time for bows and arrows?
Nope. No.
Oh, okay. That's what I thought. So the idea is that we're supposed to have a parity of arms, not rocket launchers and nukes. Come on, that's getting like crazy. We're supposed to have the parity of arms so we can at least resist a police state that is used to impose fear. They can impose a police state without a standing army. They can use drones today, can't they? And have we consented to have drones quartered over our skies? No, we haven't. And now the government wants to go after our Second Amendment. The government is open, whether Republican or Democrat, as we've seen today, as we've seen by the legislature, it doesn't matter where they are. They're after your Second Amendment rights. They're for putting drones, even though they're not armed, these drones can still be armed with tear gas to oppress people, having an assembly like, Occupy Wall Street. Did you know that Occupy Wall Streeters, whether you agree with them or not, they've been declared terrorists by the FBI?
How you doing, everybody? My name is Brian Cheshire. I would not be here today if our, politicians were following their oath of office. Okay, there's a Second Amendment. Is how I'm going to be able to protect my family at home if anybody breaks into the house. Just this past weekend, I was in Pennsylvania teaching my 14-year-old daughter how to shoot my 12 gauge. Now, the 12 gauge, like the lady said over there, is too powerful for her. It gives much too much recoil. So, I'm trying to, get everybody to wake up. We were trying to get a couple people from the NRA here, and, gentleman Tom King, I was in touch with from, a New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, and he said he would be down here, or he would send somebody down here. Are you here, Mr. King? Just what I thought. Okay? So I hope everybody just goes against this, because, I keep, sending emails out to the representatives, and half of them don't even return, the emails back. I'm done.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bill Skier, and I'm here to make 2 quick points. The first one is we must reference Kennewick, Georgia. Now, in Kennewick, Georgia, they were having something shoved down their throat by the Georgia State Legislature, which said they had to pass some kind of a law, nothing specific. They had to pass some kind of a gun control law. And so they said all citizens above the age of 18 must have a gun. And it was the first time in the history of the country that a nun was ever charged. She wasn't convicted, but she was charged with indecent exposure. She did, in fact, go out in public without a gun. Now, whether you feel positive about that or not, I hope you do feel positive about the fact that there was an interview, and it wasn't in Kennewick, Georgia. It was in Atlanta. And the question was, from the reporter, why did you had some people from the Crips and some people from the Bloods, and they were asked, why did you leave Kennewick, Georgia, and go to Atlanta? And they said, we're not afraid of law enforcement, we're afraid of citizens with guns. They might defend themselves. And that is something that we must keep in mind. An armed society is a polite society. People are not inherently suicidal. And whether people are a little nuts or whether somebody is evil, evil doesn't mean stupid. Too often, evil also comes with something intelligent. And what evil people will generally do is to be polite when they are at risk and then move somewhere else. The second point is I'm sick and tired of the hypocrisy. There is a double standard here. Okay, now, posse comitatus, the military is not to enforce law. But before we ended up with the Homeland Security, which I call Homeland Insecurity, and all the rest, which came after 9/11, what you had before that was the militarizing of the police itself. So government was hoping that we would be stupid and not notice. It's not the military, but the militarizing of the police with all the SWAT teams. And I say, yeah, you want to pass gun control, pass control of government, but don't touch the citizens' guns. Thank you.
How you doing? My name's Bob Cheshire. I'm a father of 3, Gulf War veteran. And when I was over there, I was fighting for all of our amendments. When I was over there, I was fighting for all of our amendments. Just like all the soldiers, Marines, everybody all over the world who are in our military are fighting for all of our amendments right now. Now, one of the first things Hitler did when he came into power was he disarmed his citizens. That's what we're facing, you know? They want to register our weapons, that's going to lead to confiscation. All these new laws that they're trying to pass just harm the citizens. Not going to do anything against the criminals who are going out and committing these crimes. Thank you.
I have to wonder, guns don't kill people, kids on pharmaceutical medication kill people. And I did notice when I watched, I think it was like 8 hours of the assembly talking about the SAFE Act and voting for it after their big conversation. Only one legislator talked about the fact that pharmaceutical drugs, which are given to our kids, were a possible cause of why this happened at Sandy Hook. It also is one of the reasons why it happened in Columbine and all of the other school shootings. If you go and research and go and Google it, were done by kids on pharmaceutical medication. Now, when I watch TV, every third commercial is a pharmaceutical commercial telling me all the side effects, may cause death, may cause, you know, all kinds of amazing side effects that you have to wonder why we would give this to our children. When I read a magazine, I cannot believe how many pharmaceutical ads are in magazines. Obviously, the big pharma owns the media. They own TV, they own magazines, they own everything. And this is one of the reasons why they're not talking about that when they go and discuss taking away our rights. They'll rather blame guns, but not look at the real cause and the real root, which I believe is pharmaceutical medication. I'm a mother of a child who committed suicide at the age of 15 because she was on Zoloft, which in 2003 they handed out to kids like candy. And there was no black label at the time. There was nothing that said may cause feelings of suicide. In 2012, I went and looked back as time went by, and now it is no longer even approved or has ever been approved for children under 24. So why are all these kids being given pharmaceutical medication, and why is it that every school shooting has been done by a kid under the age of 24 on this medication? This is the problem. This is what we have to look at. Guns don't shoot people, kids shoot people on pharmaceutical medication.
I didn't hear anybody mention this. Oh, and Senator Marcelino is my traitor. Here he is. Andrew Rea actually is one of my good guys. He voted no. Okay, so if you want to try to go out to buy a Ruger 22 now, it's a 10-round magazine. Most stores won't sell it to you, even though it's not on the list of banned guns, because it is a 10-round magazine, and they are not. Most stores won't sell it to you. So anything with a 10-round magazine, they've also took control of those guns from you purchasing it. Just a little fact. All right, I found out last week. I was doing my family genealogy, and I've had like a couple of thousand people on my tree. And I happened to find out that my 9th great-grandmother is Mary Leonard, and her brother happens to be Brigadier General Ebenezer Leonard. Now, he fought in the Revolutionary War. He fought all the battles, Bunker Hill and Fort Ticonderoga, and he was a personal friend of George Washington. And he actually had the honor of unlocking the gates to Boston. So I feel very proud to stand up here to fight for my Constitution, as my forefathers have. And of course they did it much better than I am at the moment, but I will try. Also, I have a very personal story of how this gun, this New York Safe Bill, would not have done anything to help save my son. My son took a pistol and shot himself to death. He stole it from his stepfather, who was a legal gun owner, and he shot himself. It was a pistol, of which the New York Safe law doesn't have any control of that. And I had my Senator Marcelino, when I went up to speak to him, he said if somebody's breaking in my house that I should pick up a chair and hit them, because that's what he would do, because his guns are locked in the safe. And I said, okay, I'm supposed to pick up a chair and try to defend myself? When my son shot himself, I did not call for anyone to give up their Second Amendment right. I want them to be able to protect their children like I couldn't save mine.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Colin Goff, and I'm a resident of Suffolk County. I am a product of the public school system, and I was a student of the public school system. And as such, I was staunchly opposed to guns. I don't want to give anybody ideas, but I was so staunchly opposed to guns that I thought, well, if you're a hunter and you really want to shoot something, keep your gun locked up at the precinct, keep the ammo at the precinct, and if you really want to go hunt, go and get your gun, and then go hunt, and then go bring it back. That seemed fairly logical to me. Again, student of the public school system. Well, then I became a student of history, and that's very different than being a student of the public school system. Because when you learn about history, you learn about something called democide, which is the #1 killer of humans on this planet, and that's death by government. Government has killed more people than anything else on the planet. Disarmament is the only way that they have ever been able to achieve that on a regular basis. And as a student of history, you can look back and see that it was longbows with the British, crossbows later on, guns, muskets, swords. No matter what weapon people have ever used, look at Braveheart, where they had to train with rocks. Governments disarm people so that they can control them. And that's why we all have to be very, very mindful of the decisions that we make after tragedies like Sandy Hook or any other tragedy that takes place. We cannot shoot from the hip, so to speak, and pass new laws to regulate this and regulate that, because unfortunately history does in fact repeat itself on a regular basis. And whether you're Democrat, whether you're Republican, this is not a conspiracy theory. The United States government has purchased billions of rounds of ammunition. Billions of rounds of hollow point ammunition. Let me just explain to you what hollow point ammunition is. It's a specific type of ammunition that maims and takes you down, and it was banned under the Geneva Convention in use of war. Why have we bought billions of rounds of hollow point ammunition to be used in the United States? Target practice is what the media will have you believe. Well, guess what? There is ammunition that can be used for target practice that is about 25% less in cost than hollow points. You're in a dream world if you think they're being used for target practice. Thousands of armored personnel carriers. These are virtual tanks to people who don't have rocket-propelled grenades and IEDs and drones and tanks and aircraft and helicopters. We are not fighting a war in Afghanistan. What do we need armored personnel carriers for in this country? What are you afraid of? It's not us. All we want is freedom. All we want is for you to leave us alone. The militarization of the police and military in this country is for us. We are the people that they are afraid of. Go on the internet, look up the Department of Homeland Security, MIAC documents, etc., and you will see that their main target are not Al-Qaeda and terrorists. All you have to do is be a student of history and you'll find out that the CIA and Mossad and the British Secret Service were the one who developed Al-Qaeda, by the way. It is being used for us, domestically. We are the terrorists. If you have a Ron Paul sticker on your car, you're a terrorist. If you have a "Don't Tread on Me" sticker on your car, you're a terrorist. If you call yourself a libertarian, you're a terrorist. If you call yourself a constitutionalist, you're a terrorist. If you're against the SAFE Act, you're a terrorist. If you question pharmaceuticals, you're a terrorist. If you question Monsanto, you're a terrorist. If you don't believe the mainstream media, you're a terrorist. Wake up, America. We're not the ones who are terrorizing this nation. It's them.
Hi, I'm Chris Garvey. Libertarians. The Libertarians will be. Oh, a spotlight. I see. The Libertarians are going to run me for district attorney this year. If they don't get me on the ballot, or if we don't get me on the ballot, then you will have a Stalinist election where all 5 major parties nominate the same district attorney and the same sheriff candidate and the same treasurer candidate. So that's your choice. There are several things I should say about the way I plan to be a district attorney. For one thing, I will not be prosecuting innocent people. I will make sure that if I have any doubts about somebody's guilt, I should stop those reasonable doubts, because if I have reasonable doubts, the jury shouldn't be convicting. You should only be convicting the guilty. The district attorney is your first line of defense when some tyrant comes along and arrests you. He's not your first line, the judge who arrests. Yes, he is the first line is actually the cop who doesn't have to arrest you. The second line of defense is the district attorney, who shouldn't be prosecuting you if you're not guilty. What is a crime? Well, I'm a libertarian, so I believe you should be free to do anything you want except to initiate force, the threat of force, or fraud against other people or their property. Most of that seems to be... Most force and fraud at this point seems to be initiated by our government. And third, I won't be enforcing any unconstitutional laws. such as the SAFE Act. On the last point that was made about the relative dangers of the government versus individuals, I did a calculation that of the 200 or so governments that existed in the 20th century, killing, I assume, 250 million people, compared to the 10 billion people who lived in the 20th century, and I'll take revisions of these numbers if you've got better ones, lived in the 20th century at some point, and the 18 million murders that they committed, I calculated that your own government is 500 million times more likely to kill you than any average individual you're likely to run into. So think about those relative dangers before you surrender your guns. Another point I want to address is somebody said that we have good gun laws already. Actually, we don't. The Sullivan Law was designed to protect muggers. So does everybody know the story of Tim Sullivan's passage of the Sullivan Law? A couple of people.
Irish gang.
Sullivan was a gang leader, and the way you won the Democratic nomination in 1911 was you had your thugs beat up all your rival Democrats at the Democratic Club and throw them out the windows. And then you held your nomination. And since all the people who might have voted against you were now out of the room, you would win the nomination. And he went on to become president of the state Senate. The problem was, since all his constituents were thugs, they were, with the widespread ownership of guns, his constituents were being shot in their chosen fields of work. It's getting so you can't even shake down a Dago shopkeeper without getting shot these days. And so they wanted to disarm Italians and blacks and Irish Catholics, because Sullivan was an Irish Protestant. And they also wanted to disarm the average citizen who was walking through the dock district, and when he got mugged, he'd pull out a gun and shoot another one of Tim Sullivan's supporters. So that's why we have the Sullivan Law. Sullivan was a corrupt legislator. He was a criminal. He was a thug. Within 2 years, he was institutionalized because he was crazy, and the law is just as crazy and corrupt and thuggish as he is. So don't think that we have a good gun law. It's designed, the licensing authority was the police chief who was in Tim Sullivan's pocket, and he was only going to allow his people to be armed.
I'm going to do this one real short. Mike will be next. Senator Marcelino, my senator, just in case you didn't understand how I felt earlier by some of the comments I made, you can start by repealing in its entirety this abomination that you call the SAFE Act. When I came to this state, a beautiful state, but one of the more corrupt governments I've seen in the country, I'm not planning on leaving soon. The fight starts here. Repeal the SAFE Act, Senator.
Seems like whenever I come up here, he's trying to cut me short or limit me to a minute, so I'll keep it brief. Thank you, Mike. No. There's just a couple quick things that I wanted to say. I was at a CSA meeting at the Plainview Library a couple months ago, and Steve Flanagan, who runs the CSA, he made a little speech, and the speech was about the Founding Fathers and making the Constitution and writing it. They didn't just, say, oh, let's put this in there, or let's put that in there. There was a lot of studying of history, as that gentleman said, and the studying of history was what is the common denominator for empires or countries to maintain itself. And the common denominator was freedom. And that's what we need to do. So the CSA has a new saying, is, I will not comply. And what I believe firmly is that we the people, which is all of us, have to get involved, have to do what needs to be done. And we, the people, will not comply with unconstitutional laws. And I can tell you that Gigi Bowman, who's running for state senate, will not comply with unconstitutional laws. She will not let you down. My name is Michael McDermott. I'm running for Congress next year, in 2014. And I will not let you down. I will not comply. So I want to thank everybody for coming. Anybody that hasn't had a chance to speak, thank you. Anybody that has a chance to speak, please come up and speak, because this is really important stuff. And once again, we the people, Gigi Bowman and me, and everybody else here, I hope, will not comply. I think I want to take a picture from up here. I wanted to ask everybody that has a strong opinion about freedom
to raise their hand. Is that almost everybody? Wait, I should have said that after I got my camera on. I want to take a picture here. And over here. And thank you. And we will not comply.
Okay, that was a tough act to follow. I'm a proud CSA member. This is the choir. You're my extended family and fellow patriots. So I'm going to direct this into the camera because this is going to the politicians that are not here tonight. And if it's going to go on YouTube, eye recognition. Okay? Got it? Last name D-U-V-A. You don't spell it wrong. It's only 4 letters, but I know a lot of people mess up 4 letters. Okay? The message to the politicians that are not here, basically the ones that threw us under the bus. A lot of people know I'm not shy to talk and I'm not short for words, but I keep telling people that the boxes of tea are piling up on the ship's deck. And they've been piling up for a while. They're getting higher and they're getting ready to be thrown overboard again. And we're here in history at this time for a reason. And I'm not a promoter of a revolution, but I mean, you're going to keep forcing our hand. We will not comply. We will not obey. And these people that threw us under the bus, they've sent a message to the rest of the state that they can't be trusted here on Long Island. The rest of the state looks down upon the politicians on Long Island as turncoats. And I'm talking about the rhinos, and you know who you are. And there's a guy named Boyle that I actually went out campaigning for. I stuck up for the guy, I pushed for the guy. And after he votes the way I wouldn't want him to, he goes, wow, I really didn't read that thing. I really didn't know what was in it. We don't need a guy like that in there. Yeah, there's too many guys like that in there. Once they get up into Albany and they get powerful and strong, and then they're like, oh, what can I do for the guy next to me that has a D next to his name? There's a famous guy that many of us know who's labeled liberalism as a mental disorder. Okay? And that being said, I would have to say that that label, I think they carry proudly that they do have a mental disorder. And we have a situation in this country right now that as we were growing up, we were taught about communism and Russians, and the Russians are coming, and they made a movie out of it and the whole bit. It's a lot worse than that. It's a lot worse than that. They've been waiting for a long time for the right time, and they've hit it. And it's not about the color. We know it wasn't about the fact that the president was black. It's all about his policies. It's about the guy having a socialist background. A lot of people don't like to talk about that, but I think more and more people are starting to realize it. And last but not least, the CSA motto, we will not comply, we will not obey. And I hope this hits the internet and everybody that was proud enough to stand up. And even if you don't stand up to talk tonight, this is the choir and we're all one here. So thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Jack Perry. There's been a lot of talk here tonight about how they're not going to disarm us. Well, the fact of the matter is the way the law is written right now, they will disarm us. It won't happen in my generation. It won't happen to my sons, but it'll happen in one after that. Because the law, the way it's written right now, you can't pass your guns down. My father can't pass his guns down to me. I can't pass my guns down to my son, and my son can't pass his down to his son. So, by attrition, we will be disarmed. The other thing is about the drugs. I don't know if you watch television and watch what they're advertising with the drugs, but it seems as though each drug, they have side effects. And I think there's one drug that's been out there for depression that is now out there as a drug for pain medication. Okay, a lot of these drugs were not meant for what they're being prescribed for. They put them out in the market and all of a sudden realized, oh, it does this. And they start prescribing for that. Okay, so the pharmaceutical companies need to be taken to task. And they're not. Why? Because they own the government. Okay, Goldman Sachs owns the government. That's why we had the financial collapse. Okay, one after the next, we just keep losing our rights. And that's what I came to say. So, please stand up.
My name is Andrew Talbot.
A lot of people already said some of the things I really wanted to get across, so I'll be real brief. First, since we know that defense is a right and not a privilege, as this gentleman pointed out, that means something very simple to me. It means that I don't have to ask for permission. So, Mr. Politician, I'm not asking anymore, that's done. Not asking for permission to defend myself, my family, and my property. But what it says to me also, that this could even have to be said, is that, you know, I know the hour is late, and what I also want to say to these folks is the greatest weapon that you have against a populace, really, is what they believe. And I'll tell you, the scales are falling off the eyes all over the place. The second thing I wanted to say is that, you know, rule of law depends on the same rules being applied to everybody equally. We are living in an authoritarian society, as the Eds pointed out and a couple other people pointed out, and we recognize that fact. So my point is simply this. If we do not have rule of law because the government has abused their position, then we can revoke their position, as did our forefathers. We remove the consent of the governed at our prerogative only. We don't ask for permission for that either. And they are on the point now, you folks in Albany, you're on the point now of having the consent of the governed revoked. Well, what does that mean? It means not only do we not obey certain laws, we are under obligation to obey nothing that you say. And that includes not paying your taxes, not sending our kids to your schools where they are unsafe. You know, so that brings me to my final point, which is, as far as I'm concerned, the New York SAFE Act is an act of treason, pure and simple. And therefore, as the sole owners of this Constitution, the people, it is both our prerogative and our duty to treat the perpetrators of this act as traitors.
Yeah.
And by the way, that means that anyone who chooses to enforce this act can be viewed, and probably ought to be viewed, but that is up to each of us, as an enemy combatant. Now that's serious stuff. But the hour, folks, is late, and more we're recognizing it. That's all I have.
My name is Philip Rolio. I'm a Navy veteran. I took an oath to defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Today I can't do that with a musket. I'm here to tell all my representatives, all representatives of the citizens of this country, that if you vote against the Constitution or vote to degrade any of its amendments, you are an enemy of the domestic kind, and we will come after you. And I'm going to show them our ultimate weapon. With this ultimate weapon, we vote. And we will vote you out.
Hello, Kevin Hernandez. I'm 19, probably the youngest gun owner here, but surprisingly, none of mine have killed anybody today. I wasn't alive for it, but the LA riots, most of you probably know, the only people whose shop that stood were the Korean booking, the Korean merchants. Every one of them armed, rifles, shotguns, a couple of those news footages, they have Uzis. Guns do not kill people, it's the lunatics that have the guns that kill people. Now, another thing with the SAFE Act, if I live close to schools, if I hear gunshots go off in a school and I decide to take my shotgun, which is legally stored in my trunk, and to take that person out, do I go to jail for having my gun on school property now? I was curious about that. Also, all this talk like how nothing bad can ever happen, like 911 is not always going to be there. Look at Hurricane Sandy. Now, I didn't shoot anything at Hurricane Sandy, obviously, but my brother's saying over there, our aunts live in Mastic, someone got shot in the head over a gas line. That gas line lasted maybe 3 days? What if it was 3 months? What if when like the LA riots was race riots? When that's food riots? When that's gas riots? When that's not the Rodney King riots? When that's the Stop and Shop riots? When your kids haven't eaten in 3 days? What are you going to do when 911 can't be there? Because when seconds count, the police will be there in minutes.
A strong message for sure for Long Island legislators, not to react hastily or emotionally to events like Sandy Hook. Time will tell if these legislators will heed the warning of these voters and activists. Save Long Island sent out 31 invitations via registered mail to state legislators. 5 RSVP'd no. No one else responded. Assemblyman Chad Lupinacci sent a letter that was read out on stage. Out of 31 legislators on Long Island, 13 Republicans voted yes to the SAFE Act. 3 Republicans voted no, 1 did not vote. Every Democrat voted yes. I'm Danny Panzella, reporting on Long Island for TruthSquad.tv.
Them out, or let me defend myself. You don't have to defend yourself. The burden of proof is on them. Keep your damn mouth shut.
Some kid in Connecticut commits a horrific act, and we're made to pay for it.